Good morning, aloha, and happy Thanksgiving. Welcome on in. I'm your host, Bull Muscle. Today we've got a good consultation going on. But before I start with that, I'd just like to say I'm thankful for each and every one of you that has watched me, continues to watch me, supports me in any way on what I do in this channel, is on my Discord, is uh, any in any other way associated with me. Thank you very much for your support, and I will continue to deliver the content that I feel is useful to all of you. So if you would like a consultation, as always, write in to askbullmuscle@gmail.com, where I will free of charge create an advice or response video as you see fit. So today we have a consultation from a longtime friend of the channel, and let me just pull it up right here. If you'll forgive me, there we are. God, everybody's blowing up my social media today. Figures. By the way, aren't y'all ready for football? Tomorrow we got my fighting Texas Aggies playing that low down, rotten, dirty, disgusting school in what used to be Texas, but might as well be San Francisco these days. The Texas University Longhorns beat the hell out of Texas. I'm sorry, beat the ever living, ever loving, compound, complex, fighting Texas Aggie hell out of them T-Sips. I got plenty of friends who are Longhorns fans. I ain't meaning anything too nasty by it, but I would love to watch A&M blast you guys into next year. Not just because it would secure a perfect season for A&M at 12-0, which has never happened in history before, but because it would make Texas's final record 8-4, which is just, if you know anything about college football, very poetic. Anywho, football talk aside, here we go. Hi, Bull Muscle. I would like to know how to do the math to calculate whether or not it would be the most cost-efficient option for me to buy a house or live in an apartment and invest any difference between monthly payments related to the house and rent for the apartment in the S&P 500. It's a great question. What you're doing here is good, rational, economic analysis. You are saying, what is the most cost efficient option for me to do? This is something everyone should do. Whether or not you buy a house, you should be looking at it from an analytical, numbers based perspective first. And then, once you've got the numbers, then you can put sentiments into it to see whether or not that moves the needle. Here are some examples in my local area. One bedroom apartment, $750 a month for rent. Wow. All right. That is pretty affordable. This person, I'm not going to state which state, but lives in the Midwest. So uh, I guess that number probably already gave that away, if we're honest. It was either going to be the Midwest or the Deep South. Two-bedroom apartment for $1,000 a month of rent, but could split it with a roommate. So an effective cost of $500. That's very good. The house looking at is $249,900, so $250. Still pretty affordable on U.S. standards. A 20% down payment at just under 50K, and a monthly mortgage payment at the current fixed rate for mortgages in that area is roughly 6% of $1,236. $462 a month in property taxes. Ouch. Okay, just that right alone is right. That's about $5,000 a year, a little bit more, just in property taxes alone. That is high. That is very high. And that is a massive disincentive to owning the house. And I'll break down the numbers as to why it's a disincentive in a little bit. Assuming that I would have the money to be able to afford the house and the monthly payments associated with it, and I would invest the difference between rent and the mortgage plus property taxes, as well as that down payment in the S&P 500, which option would leave me better off financially after factoring in appreciation in the stock market, as well as an appreciation in the value of the house? Thanks and happy Thanksgiving. So I wanted to ask a couple follow-ups, as I usually do, to try and get a little bit more clarity on this. Asked if you see yourself staying in the area for more than 5 years, and if this house has at least two rooms, would you be willing to have a live-in tenant or roommate within your house to rent? And if so, what would you charge them? So, right, he listed a roommate scenario for renting. Ideally, you could also list a roommate scenario for buying. As a single person, which this person is, there's not a lot of value in having that extra space unless you've got a really good reason for it, which he did not list. So I'm presuming then that this is available. Uh, and I asked if the property taxes were separate from or lumped into that monthly payment. He said separate from. So again, ouch. Doesn't know for sure. So it's likely I'll be in this area for more than 5 years down the road than not. As for the roommate in the house, would be willing to consider it if you can find someone willing to split monthly costs with me 50-50 and share common areas like the kitchen, not looking to get into house hacking at the moment. Fair enough, and I don't know what that 250K is buying you in terms of size, but I'm assuming it's a decent size home, probably one bathroom, probably two or maybe three bedrooms, maybe a garage, and a decent but not extravagant size of land. Uh, Now, if those are different variables, for instance, if you put it on more land and then you can go, gardening or other hobbies like that that may justify buying the house, that you can factor that in at your own discretion. There are a million little mini scenarios like that, and I can't probe for every single one in one of these. So, for the future, for anybody else, if you want more detailed analysis, the more details you give me, the more I can work with. But in general, this was well written, simple, to the point. So credit to you for that. Um, since property taxes are on top of the mortgage, we bring the total monthly cost to just under 1,700 a month for the house, plus any home insurance that's required. I would reckon for a house this size in the Midwest, where you got to worry about tornadoes, hailstorms, derechos, you're probably looking at least 100 a month, and honestly, that's probably conservative. You're probably looking at closer to 1,800 a month total. If you had a roommate, you'd probably charge 800 to 900 a month for rent. That's pretty reasonable. That's about 50-50 for all things considered, depending on whether or not utilities are included. It would probably depend on stuff like if the roommate wants the house warmer in the winter, colder in the summer. Good. That's a very prudent way to go about it. So let's dig into the math. First off, if you don't intend to have roommates, the no-brainer answer is to continue renting. Okay, it is simply because the house is far too much space. Uh, how to do it? First, I'm gonna explain how to do it, and then you can go from there. You can go to www.mortgagecalculator.org, and you can plug in these values, what down payment you want, what interest rate you expect, and how long you want the loan to be, what you expect property taxes, home insurance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to be. And yeah, putting in your numbers, these payments seem to make sense. So probably is what you did already, but for anybody else watching this video, mortgagecalculator.org will get you right there. It will also give you a breakdown of the mortgage. So, for instance, assuming for a moment you went with, let's see, it was 249,900, 20% down payment, your property taxes are about 5,500 a year, your home insurance will probably be about 1,500 a year. That's 125 a month. That's probably about right. Um, and you're buying it outright. Yeah, your monthly payment's going to be just a tick under 1,800. Looking at the breakout of the data. Let me see if I can put up my screen for a moment here. That might be useful. There we go. Okay. So if we zoom in here, what you can see here is, oh, really? Are we not? Let me hit calculate again. Great, it's frozen. Okay. Well, what you can see here is that the principal section is a very small chunk of the total amount you're paying. Doesn't really hit 50% until, what is this, 2051, thereabouts, right about here. Yeah, so all of this time, the vast majority of what you are paying is interest, taxes, fees, and this isn't even including maintenance. So, mm, what that alone is going to tell you is that you, if you're alone, you are paying a lot of money, both to the state and to, any local districts, and to the mortgage company for renting the money, and to the insurance company for insuring your home. Those are all expenses. That is not a form of savings. Your equity section here is very, very low. It's something like a couple $1,000s a year. In other words, right, that you're paying over $1,000 more than you would for your standard place as a renter. That $1,000 a month, if invested into the S&P 500, is going to do a lot better than the equity that you're putting into the house. Because again, this is well over $1,000 just in expenses related to the house alone. So to me, that's more than the rent you're going to pay. Generally speaking, if the expenses on a home are higher than the rent you expect to pay, it's not a good deal. That's a good rule of thumb, I would say. And here in this instance, the answer is yes. Let me try refresh this, see if it'll pop up. No, it's just being annoying today, isn't it? Oh well. The point here is that your taxes are very, very high, and that is like right. Your taxes alone are almost equivalent. Just your property taxes at 462 a month are almost equivalent to your entire rent if you split the two bed with your roommate. If that's the case, it's almost a no-brainer to go with renting in both scenarios, roommate or not, but especially if the answer is no roommate. If it's roommate, it's a little bit more complicated. So renting is still the correct answer. It's a little bit more justifiable to get a home because if you go the roommate route, you can change this to why are you just misbehaving now? Let's see here. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna put this back up on the screen so you can actually see now. There you go. For 2026. Why did this thing's being annoying today? So if we put in 20% and so on and so forth, it's 5,500 in taxes because you live in a state that has high ones. We're buying and not refining. Hit the calculator. The fuck? Why is it not popping up? All right, well, that's really annoying. I'll stop playing around with that. Um, Even if you have roommates within the house, that would allow you to go for a 15-year loan or a 20-year loan, which would dramatically increase the percentage of your monthly payments that is equity. However, your total monthly payment would go up. In other words, from a cash flow perspective, a very large chunk of your income would go towards the house. You'd pay it off a lot faster as a result. So there's a lot of benefits to a 15-year mortgage. That's why I got one when I bought my house in South Carolina. So because both the housing market and the S&P 500 are running at near all-time highs, I'm going to conclude that while historically the S&P 500 has outperformed the housing market is somewhat more stable and a little bit less volatile, but I'm going to assume pretty much a wash between the two. Housing is a pretty good, in general, a pretty good equity, it's a pretty good investment to make. There are worse ones you can do. I think in general the stock market performs better, but those are my own biases as someone who moves around a lot. But your state's high income tax on top of the interest rate at 6%, you are paying a much, much steeper interest rate than I ever am. Right. I got mine at 2.375 because money printer went burr under the Biden administration and I benefited because I could see the writing on the wall that inflation was going to go up. And in 2022, that's exactly what it did, which meant interest rates went up with it. Now, interest rates are coming down, and if interest rates continue to decline, perhaps even if you paired them with a recession, you continue to save and invest your money, maybe consider some T-bills as a hedge because if the housing market were to drop, the S&P 500 would also probably drop. I would suggest that you're better off saving. So, a couple good numbers for you. Your principal, if you went with this 30-year loan, would not be more than 50% of your total payment until 2051. It would not be more than $500 a month, which is your cheap rent, until 2041. It would not be more than 33% of your total payment until 2044. Your interest would be greater than $750 a month, which is your current rent, until 2039. It would be greater than 500 a month until 2047. So the payoff period for this is immense. I mean, we're in 2025. Just to get your interest rate, just to get the interest payments you make below your current rent, even if your rent were to continue to go up, 3, 4, 5% a year, you're looking at well into the 2030s at the absolute best scenario. And hell, right, let's go ahead and take the best scenario for the house, right? You've got a live-in tenant who's paying you 900 a month. That 900 a month won't cover interest plus home insurance, let alone taxes, until the mid 2030s. That's nearly 10 years. So, my advice to you is under the current market, no, renting is a no-brainer and you should continue to do it. Now, let's talk a little bit about why I bought my house and why it was a more prudent business decision or economically rational decision to make at the time. I already mentioned the low interest rates, but unlike you, for a good while, I had two roommates, not one. In other words, now I charge them extraordinarily low rent. Like we're talking, I think 450 to 500 a month, which is damn near unheard of. But as a result, between that and my much lower payment, because I had a much cheaper house, the south winds on this particular occasion. Even today, the house I own is valued at far less than 249. So uh, that is maybe something to do with your current market, but I can't really speak to the local supply and demand that would change housing prices in your particular area. But because of the 15-year loan, the much lower interest rate, I got 2.375 versus you sitting at about 6. Um, and you could refi, but that's a gamble based on whether or not rates come down. And who knows whether or not they will. Right now, we have a very, very, very spendthrift government. In other words, they are going to continue to run huge deficits. What do deficits do? Well, they cause inflation. It's a form of economic stimulus. Every economist from John Maynard Keynes to Henry Hazlitt to Adam Smith would tell you as much. So as a result, those deficits causing inflation will probably bolster interest rates. The Federal Reserve will be less keen to cut them. Now, again, they could come down, and they probably will a little bit because inflation seems to be evening out towards 3%, which is a lot higher than the Fed's long-term goal. But at 3% inflation, 6% interest rate, yeah, you're still paying a nice hefty premium. 6% is historically about the norm, but given the much higher home value that you'd be paying that 6% on, I don't think it makes sense when rent is as cheap as it is in your area. So I did a little bit more math on this, and I wanted to see what housing price would you have to get for such a property to where it's more competitive with rent. Because right now, renting is the no-brainer option in your area, be it for roommates or be it for being alone. And the answer, when I assumed property taxes are linear, which is, I think, a reasonable assumption, and then your insurance and maintenance would be about the same, linear, so decrease those. Your The answer surprised me. I thought it would be a little bit higher than this, but given how spectacularly low rent is, and it sounds like based on your area, it's not going to appreciate dramatically. Rent might go up 3 or 4% a year, but so too will housing. So it more or less washes out, and so too will inflation, and presumably so too will your wages. Hopefully they go up higher than that. You are a smart young man, so I think you will be able to increase them faster. Be that as it may. Uh, the number I came up with was 146,000. In other words, you would need to see home values decline by about 40% to get them anywhere near competitive with your rent right now at 750. Um, and that's assuming interest rates also go down, which if housing declined that much, they would. But were interest rates to stay the same, yikes. Yeah, it'd have to be well into the lower 100s for it to be competitive. Um, yeah. So for that reason, and even then, If you were to do that, I would recommend a 15-year loan. Unless interest rates get super low, like pandemic level low again, which they won't. Uh, but I would look really hard at a 15-year loan. Early Retirement Extreme has mentioned many a time, y'all know his book. I've referenced it God knows how many times on this channel, that mortgage is it's not a French word per se, but it's a combination of two French words. Gage, which is French for luck, and mort, which is French for death. Deathlock. A lot of mortgages at high interest rates on big properties are exactly that. They make you what is called cash poor. In other words, or housing poor, rather. You do have a lot of equity, but almost all of your net worth is in a completely illiquid asset, which is your house. This is not necessarily a good thing if you ever want to tap into it. You can take a HELOC, but there are some disadvantages credit wise to doing so. In other words, that's really all I got for you. Keep renting, man. Unless the housing market changes to where it's more affordable to get in, this is a bad deal. And unless property taxes come down, it's a bad deal. Your state has very high property taxes. For a $250,000 house to be paying about 2%, actually a little more than 2% per year of the value of the home in taxes, that is a tremendous disincentive to any middle or working class individual looking to buy houses. Your state should consider lowering property taxes. This is, you know, maybe they could find some of their very corrupt public education system. Maybe there's some places to be cut there. Just a thought. Again, I'm not going to give away what state you live in, but you know who you are, and you know what state you live in. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of complaints about the educational system in that state regarding corruption and poor uses of money and pensions. But yeah, dude, honestly, property taxes, yeah, here's your summation. Your property taxes alone make renting the no-brainer option. Interest rates and higher housing values than it probably should be make it a complete just swish. Easy. Continue renting. I get that sucks. If you've got a sentimental reason that you'd want to buy a house, then you could reconsider, but you would be paying a price for those sentiments. It is substantially more economically efficient for you to continue renting as things are currently standing right now. I'll put one asterisk on this. If you find a girl, y'all get married, and you're a double income couple for a while, it's still more economically rational to rent, even that $1,000 place. But if you were to buy a house, you could probably make a 15-year mortgage work if y'all both committed to paying it down. And if you were to do that, you would build equity very quickly relative to a 30-year loan where you don't build equity as well. Oh, and if President Trump gets these 50-year mortgages going, do not, for the love of God, take one. That's all I got for y'all. Have a happy Thanksgiving. As always, make good decisions. Those good decisions form your actions. Those actions form your habits. Those habits form your values. Those values form an ethos that can be the guide star through the rough waters of life. I, for one, am ready to demolish a lot of food after crushing a good workout today. If you have any questions, write to me at askbullmuscle@gmail.com. Much love, y'all. And gig 'em.